Hey everyone, how's it going? And welcome back to Citywide Bites. Well, it's still October, folks. We are continuing our series of interviews about all things spooky, and for this one, we're going to be traveling all the way out to San Francisco to talk about The Others. This is the first book in a trilogy by author Evette Davis, who joins us right here. Evette, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. So why don't we start by just taking like a quick walk through what this book is all about?
Well, I think the elevator pitch is that this is a secret society of supernatural beings that meddle in elections to save the fate of humanity. It's quite timely, accidentally.
Right. That seems familiar, actually. Weird.
Right. Yes, I've had to tell people many times. No, it really is fiction, though. I'm sorry.
But did you start writing it like within the last, say, 4 years?
Yeah, I have. And,
Yeah.
it has to do with my background working in politics and public affairs. I have a day
Oh.
job I've had for 25 years running a consulting firm in San Francisco. And before that, I worked for a member of Congress and I was a newspaper journalist. So I have this kind of background that's very much always in the swirl of either local or national politics. And I think everybody can agree that over the last few years, there's been lots of changes in discourse.
Mm, yeah.
So that's how the book came to be.
And I can definitely see how how like your work experience is kind of infused within the story. Of course, your main character, Olivia Shepherd, is also a political consultant. Being a journalist, of course, makes you a very, very like savvy writer. I can see kind of how like your real life kind of factors into the story. But I do want to ask real quick though, when it comes to going from like journalism where brevity is key to a novel where you can be as long as you want. What was it like to kind of jump into like that world?
It's hard. It's hard.
Right?
When I'll even go back many, many years ago to a galaxy far, far away when I was in college. And I will tell you that I was constantly having this tension between being a creative writer and studying journalism. And my journalism professors always thought that my writing was too long, and my creative writing professors always thought my writing was too short. So I think I've sort of tried to find the right balance for this my entire life. But there's definitely, being a writer is hard work. I think people have lots of fantasies that you can just like sort of kick out a book in a few weeks or whatever. But the fact is that it takes a long time. And politics is not very exciting for people who don't like politics. We know that for sure.
Right.
So the key here was to write about it, but not to bore people to death, to give them a little bit of a flavor of it as a profession for her, but not, get them into the saga of certain things for which most people have no time or use for.
Yeah. I feel like if you did like a fantasy book but also made it a heavy like political book, you might the readers might not like be like jiving for it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's not that interesting. And we you can see that just watching what's going on in the country today. Like
Sure.
people don't want to talk about economic policy and tariffs unless you're a super nerd, right? So
Right, yeah. Especially if you're gonna do it against like a backdrop of demons and fairies and vampires.
right.
It's like this is a weird like melding here. But then let us pivot to the world that you've created with The Others. Now, this book is set in San Francisco, so two-part question for you. What was it why San Francisco, but also how did you kind of combine these like two worlds, like the very real world with this fantasy world?
Well, I live in San Francisco. I've lived here for a long time, probably 30 years now. I wouldn't be considered a local quite yet, but I'm on my way. I find the city quite magical and beautiful. And I think, there's been this sort of doom loop kind of narrative about our city. And I just want to tell all of your listeners that in fact, San Francisco is fine. And it is a magical jewel box of a city. And every time you turn around, there's something interesting to see. It has a lot of beauty. And so it's very inspiring. And because I'm here and because I've watched the fog roll in and I've seen the light playing on certain things, it just, as a creative person, it just gave me inspiration. I live just a few steps away from Golden Gate Park. So I had a lot of time to observe and imagine um, this place as a magical place. But the reason I merged them is I read a lot of fantasy and science fiction, obviously, and I'm not a huge fan of like different worlds. I wasn't interested in world building where I have to like create an entirely different language and everybody has to wear bear skins and like live in a castle. That's fun. I'm not, I love it, but I was intrigued by creating a contemporary environment for these things. And I was inspired by The Discovery of Witches, which is a fabulous book series and a television series about a witch studying, I think at Oxford or Cambridge, and she
I
meets a
think so. Yeah.
there who's a geneticist. Man, I fell in love with those books. It was crazy. And I just thought I was intrigued, like here they all are in the modern world studying genetics, teaching, going to the library. And so that set me on a path. But my book, Olivia, obviously we have some things in common, but really this book is a lot about how women find their power, how they become leaders, how they manage it. And it's really, this whole series is in some ways about her journey of figuring out who she is. Literally, there's spoilers about who she really is, and how she manages this information and how she manages her power. And that was inspired by just being a woman in an industry where mostly men were the leaders at the beginning of my professional journey, and the kind of frustration that I ran into as like I would get asked a question, but the answer sounded better coming out of a man's mouth, right? So this was my imagination working. It started off as a play about a frustrated political consultant who was having a hard time professionally, and out of the corner of her eye she sees like an ancient female warrior who's like saying, hey, just like take his head off with a sword, like what are you waiting for? You're being a wimp. But I couldn't write a play. It didn't work for me. It wasn't my kind of milieu. So this is how this book got written.
Okay, then let's talk more about Olivia. She is your main character. She is also a political consultant, also an empath. So she now that's different from a psychic or a telepath, in that she has the ability to specifically sense emotions of those around her. But
Right.
she doesn't seem to revel in this. She kind of keeps these powers hidden, just trying to live like a regular life. Why? I would be all over this.
Yeah. Well, it has to do with her mother, who has, not handled her skills very well and has substance abuse problems and is just sort of flighty. And so her reaction to that is to, keep herself locked down, to not feel things, to be very pragmatic, to be very logical. And, suffice to say that that kind of all goes out the window as she is introduced to all this. And over time, she learns to embrace her powers and her sixth sense and her, kind of instinct, which I think is something that we all struggle with as human beings. We feel things, we think we know things, but we're taught to sort of not use them. And I guess this is a little bit of a meditation on how that sometimes can be a good thing, to trust your instincts and to learn to understand them.
Why give Olivia this particular ability? Because usually in these kinds of stories, the power is more like a physical one. Like she's going to be this like supreme warrior or something like that. Instead, it's like, well, emotional sensation is certainly useful, but not the best thing when you're fighting like demons or dragons or whatnot.
Well, I mean, I think I gave her that power initially because politics and public affairs, it's all, a lot of it is about us being a student of human emotion and being able to read people and read a room. And so as a consultant, I thought that would make her interesting to the council. That would make her interesting to Gabriel, the leader of the council, who is also not what he seems. I mean, the good thing about this book is that nobody is what they are. They are not what they seem, and they are more. And it takes you a long time to sort of figure out who's who and what they're up to. She does eventually gain other powers, just so you know. Luckily for you, if you keep on reading, she's not a one-trick pony. But starting with knowing what really people are really thinking on the other side of the table, so to speak, is the beginning of her journey of really being able to read people. And I think that if you look at the most successful negotiators, if you look at the most successful diplomats, they are known for they're looking across the table, they're able to figure out people and ultimately move people towards peace or, contracts or whatever it is. So I was fascinated with that. And I also have a somewhat similar background. And I think that I just wanted to work through some of that.
Okay. How would you say Olivia adapts to like this new life of hers? Because before all this, she's just a regular person, San Francisco, and then one day in her kitchen, she is met by this person named Elsa, a time walker, who tells her about all about the future that awaits her. Um, is she like, okay, let's do it, or please God, I don't want to do this?
No, she does not want any part of that. And she actually throws Elsa out of the house and is like, get out of here.
Yes,
It's crazy.
right.
But ultimately, for a variety of reasons, she brings her back. I mean, I would say that she handles it badly for a long, long while. She keeps on handling it badly in the other books. because this journey takes her a while, and she, you know, do you understand the concept of the unreliable narrator? Like, I didn't quite want to write a Gone Girl where, somebody is just a malevolent character who turns out they're very sneaky and sort of doing all these terrible things. But if somebody is just perfect and completely, formed, you either have to have something terrible happen to them, right? So that you have a drama, or you have to make them imperfect at the beginning and they have to kind of ebb and flow and learn a little and then go backwards. And I've read some, I don't read all the reviews of my books because I don't have that thick of a skin, but some of the people write, God damn it, that Olivia, she's like so frustrating. And it's like, yeah, but that's what makes her compelling. And that's what makes you want to stay up and read the book, because you think, what the heck is going to happen to that girl? Like she's got a lot going on.
All right. Now, this book is not a standalone. This is part of a trilogy. You have two more books coming out: The Gift and the Campaign.
Yeah.
Without giving away some spoilers, but what can we expect in the next two books?
Still a lot more thrilling, near-death experiences. The middle book takes her out of the country on assignment, and the core group of people in these books stay the same, and they move into different sorts of situations, and some disappear for a little while and some come back. So the readers will have a kind of comfortable arc of people. They won't have to learn about a lot of new characters, but new people pop up along the way. By the third book, Olivia gets a really good job assignment. Is chosen to help elect a woman president. That has its own set of challenges. In the middle, she's dealing with, all sorts of dangerous things connected to her enemies. So she just is going on this arc. And along this arc also is getting more involved in the council, understanding more of its responsibility, dealing with the relationships of the people she meets along the way. She picks up a boyfriend who's an ancient vampire. There's a lot of complications dating someone who's 200 years old. So there's just all sorts of things happening to her. And as we discussed, some of it she handles well, and some of it she handles quite badly.
That's a heck of like an age difference there.
Yes, exactly. And she talks about it. And
Right.
she talks about how she needs to be a little bit more, well read basically on life history in order to kind of understand, William, who started off in the Civil War and is a present day kind of modern dude. So
let, let me tell you about the time I saw Abe Lincoln speak. It was amazing.
exactly. Or how about when I was an ambulance driver in World War One, and
Sure.
I did, so and the reason I like using supernatural people and vampires in particular is I like the way you can bend time. You can go back, you
Mm.
can have somebody who's a witness to something, and you can have a conversation about human behavior without necessarily having to have a history lesson or be preachy. So that's one of the fundamental reasons why I love fantasy and science fiction so much for writing, is because it gives you a ton of flexibility to move across time and space or other dimensions and still have relevancy to your writing.
Mhm. Now, you mentioned this earlier, and I do want to ask about it, that you don't read all the reviews, and reviews can be very hard, of course. It can be hard to hear someone not like what you spent years of your life working on. And this book actually just came out about a month ago, so it's a very, very new book. But when it comes to reviews, do you feel like they can make you like a better writer?
Well, I mean, some of them can. I think if they tell me something that's important that I need to know, I mean, that's part of why I think when you have books, you have beta readers, and you're trying to socialize your ideas with people and get feedback. Sometimes you just have to accept, though, that you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And what I really like is when I read a review, it says, I stayed up all night, but in the end, these characters just weren't for me. And I'm like, okay, well, I got like halfway there with you.
Yeah.
You know,
It's like
try harder next
I
time.
love the first part. The second part, not
Yeah.
so much.
It's okay. I mean,
Y-
look, there's lots of people out there, and some are gonna love it and some aren't, and some are gonna, and I think first books and trilogies are roller coasters. You have to climb up to the top of the hill to get down the other side. So
Yeah.
people are patient and keep on going.
Yeah, you can't really let like the first part of anything be how you decide, okay, the rest of this will be either good or bad, because you have no idea.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
when you're starting off, they're always like, the first chapter has to grab the reader by the throat and pull them in. You're like, okay, well, so that, so you're trying. I mean, you have to hope that every book you write, you get better and better and better. And that's certainly my intention, is to always improve my writing, as I move along.
Now, I think you mentioned you had beta readers. Did they offer you some really like critical insight or tips as you were going along?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a lot of really good early readers. And I mean, and I the third book, so the second book is done and it's in its pre review phase. I think all the advanced reader copies will be out soon, and it'll be out in April. And I'm finishing the third book now, and I actually just got it back from my editor, so it's got a lot of red ink to it to me, to take a look at. But yeah, I like it. I like that feedback because you're in your head building this thing, and you need other people externally to tell you whether or not things make sense.
And I think as someone who has also worked in the news industry as well, you gotta have an editor.
You
That
sure
is
do.
crucial.
Yeah, although I'm married to an editor, and I have to tell you, I don't really let him edit my work at all.
No, 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 no.
The
There's
secret
gotta be
to
like a
a
line
long
there.
marriage.
Yeah. You don't get to edit the books. The end.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't care if you want to work for free. You still
That's
can't do
right.
it.
That's right.
Um, Now, is this your first book? Is the others your like debut as a writer?
No, no, I have
Oh,
a
okay.
novel that came out 2 years ago called 48 States, which is a book about a time in the United States where the US has reclaimed states as fracking territories, and the CEO of this company that runs these fracking territories tries to overthrow the government and take over the country. That was a little bit lucky guess too. But and that book I independently published. It won a star review from Kirkus, and was named one of the best indie books of the year. So I have a real interest in these themes of political discourse and national politics. And I just won't mind saying, like, I don't like how unkind people are to each other. I would like people to all slow down, be patient, learn to listen to each other, and stop demonizing one another in order to try to get our attention. I think most people, I'm pretty sure most people are like us and would rather have a conversation about things that are substantive and not be personally, rude to one another. So, and I think there's a real danger, especially with the amount of information that we can have on the internet. And, it started with cable TV, and now this just wild west of the internet and social media. And now you add in AI, and it's like people really they need to think about the world they want to live in and make it that way by being nice to each other and giving each other kindness and respect, even when you just fundamentally don't like somebody's idea. And I think that's easy to do if you just take a deep breath and be like, okay, that's not my cup of tea. And maybe I'm Pollyannish about it, but I'd like to think we could be that way with each other.
I agree.
Yeah.
Full force. All right, so we are coming down to the end of this conversation, but a few more questions remain. I do want to ask, you did touch on this earlier about the council. So this is a group who seeks to influence humanity from the shadows, and sort of opposing them is Gabriel Laurent, the leader of a realm where vampires, witches, fairies, and demons navigate a very delicate balance of power. How is Olivia sort of going to get involved with this?
Well, she's pulled in ostensibly to run a congressional campaign in Silicon Valley. That sort of is the door opener to how Gabriel gets her into the council, and then I sort of unravel or unwrap this secret organization and help, and she gets sort of pulled into everything that they do. I was very intrigued by putting all these supernatural beings, again, rather than using brute force. Like, I made them into the UN or a kind of a bureaucracy, and I just thought that was a hoot to like have all these rules and regulations and make them do things in that way. And I really liked putting all of these sort of stereotypes in fantasy, but putting them in different places, forcing the reader to kind of reconcile with a different kind of character than they might have seen before.
Okay,
Of
all
course, he could
right.
just use his power to change an election, but that doesn't work, right? So,
Yeah, you really can't have that like Deus Ex Magica aspect to it. It's got to be you got to like work for it.
right.
All right. Now we have talked about your two sequels, but I do want to ask after this is out, what's next for you?
I think I'm going to try to write a series about a magical detective security agency that has to go looking for like missing objects, cursed or different objects, and why they're missing. And I think some of the characters from this trilogy are going to be involved in this new series because I like them so much, but I don't want to keep on using the same storyline. I want them to do something different. And
That
I've
is
had
an awesome idea. I love that idea.
oh great. Well,
Yeah.
I'll make sure you see the book when I finally get it written.
There we go. I'm looking forward to that. All right, folks. Well, that is the end of this episode. Yvette, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate this. And folks, if you want to learn more about the writer, you go to evettedavis.com. That's the website. Uh, Definitely pick up your copy of the others now available, and then the gift and the campaign. Do we have release dates for those yet?
The gift will be out in April of 2025, and the campaign will be out in September. So you don't have long to wait.
Wow, I like this. I like
Yes.
this. All right. Well, Yvette, thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
My pleasure. Have a great day. Take care.
And you too. And for the other folks at home, thank you once again for watching this. Of course, follow the socials, and I'll see you all next time.